Good day, everyone. I'm your moderator, again, Lee Judge, and welcome to today's webinar entitled Contact Center Automation, How Customer Service RPA is Shaping the Industry, a webinar brought to you by Jacada. As a note, to honor the attendee privacy, only your name will appear in the attendee window. Today's webinar will analyze industry trends, challenges, and proven solutions in contact center automation. In addition, specific use cases and case studies will be shared to demonstrate how leading contact centers are already driving substantial value for automation. Following the presentation, there will be a question and answer session, so please feel free to type your questions into the Q&A window at any time. Our panelists will address those questions along with the ones that you may have submitted during registration. Our presenters today are Craig Le Clair, Vice President and Principal Analyst at Forrester Research, Toppol, Vice President of Professional Services at Jacada, and Dylon Mills, Product Marketing Director at Jacada. Before we begin, I'll once again mention there are some concerns I've seen on the line of the chat window. You can chat with me there at any time. To honor the privacy of your attendance, only your name will appear in your attendee window. So let's begin. Dylon, the presentation is all yours.
Thank you, Lee, and hopefully everybody can hear me okay. Lee, can you confirm? Perfect. Okay, so real quickly, before we jump into the meat of today's presentation, which is Craig Le Clair's content as well as attendees, I wanted to set the stage and just very briefly, in about 3 minutes or so, explain what it is we mean when we refer to Customer Service RPA. So looking at Customer Service RPA, what is Customer Service RPA? So when we refer to Customer Service RPA today in this presentation and later on, what we are referring to is any type of automation that takes place in the contact center. So you can think of it as automation that takes place for a customer waiting for a customer service resolution. When a customer calls into a contact center or chats with the live agent or any other means, we have the ability, and we will show in use cases later on, the ability to automate certain processes that take place within the contact center for customer service for a customer that's waiting for a customer service resolution. So where can Customer Service RPA be applied? Well, we look at it in 3 different categories. First is to the live agent. So Craig will refer to this a little bit later on as attended automation, and basically what that is automation of the agent's desktop. Procedures that take place on the agent's actual workspace, we can implement the ability to automate certain processes and procedures that will take place that the live agent is generally responsible for. Next is automation for a chatbot. So chatbots are very good at identifying the customer's intent, but a lot of times that's where the chatbot stops. So we want to make the chatbot transactional and actually automate the processes on the back end. So when a chatbot identifies the customer's intent, they can apply that intent towards processes and procedures that are automated through Customer Service RPA. And then finally, where customer service can also be applied is in self-service. So certain processes and procedures can be automated that are initiated directly by the customer. So we look at, or we apply Customer Service RPA to the contact center to automate these 3 areas. And just to provide a little bit more detail of what I mean by this, Customer Service RPA spans both attended and unattended automation. And there are some examples here of what I mean by that. So say a customer calls into a contact center and they have an issue that requires the agent that they're talking to open a ticket for them. Well, the Customer Service RPA can be used to automate the filling of that ticket. Customer Service RPA can also be used to summarize the call and automate the call summary and the notes that the agent is generally responsible for taking. In addition to that, on the back end, the unattended side, there's ticket status monitoring. So Customer Service RPA can be made responsible for monitoring the status of the ticket all the way through to closure, and then the automation can be applied so that the customer receives an SMS when the ticket is closed, notifying them of the resolution of the issue. So this is just a high-level example. Later on, Adi will provide actual use cases of where we've implemented Customer Service RPA for our existing customers. But at this time, what I'd like to do is pass it back to Lee so that we can get to the next portion of this presentation today.
Okay. All we have to do now is facilitate moving the presentation over to our esteemed guest at Forrester. So let me move the presentation to you, Craig.
Oh, thank you. It's great to be here speaking about this very interesting subject here.
Let me pass it along 1 second. Let me get it down to you. Okay, you should have presentation rights now.
All right, terrific. So let's drill in a little bit, to this contact center automation and take a look at, kind of what it is. Hopefully my audio is good. And it's all within this broader context. Forrester does a lot of research around the age of the customer, which is really this sort of shifting power to the customer, really away from brands and institutions that used to control the message in a much more rigorous fashion. Today, with what we have in our pockets, with social media, the customer has a heightened level of expectations, and they have much more information than they ever had. So you really have to start looking at this imbalance. Some would call it a better balance, because the customer ultimately is, who we're trying to serve in business. So this is kind of the perspective. A lot of the technologies in the contact center that we'll be talking about are really not just about cost efficiency and reducing call time and the typical kind of metrics, but most astute businesses are viewing it in terms of, how do I really create a better customer experience, and particularly one that's omni-channel, one that understands what the customer is trying to accomplish, not just aware that they're operating in one channel or another, but coordinating the information from those channels to try to get a contextual view of the customer. Now, when you look at the top customer service trends, and this is a fairly recent report that we came out with, there are three categories of this. There is operational efficiency on the left, faster, trying to get operations to be more cost effective, and really having operations become more human. The more and more we depend on technology, the less we depend on humans, and that's really an opportunity for companies to create a stronger human touch. And a lot of the robotics we'll be talking about is really essential for doing that. We use humans not in the most highest value way, leveraging the flexibility of their cognitive capabilities. We use them in some ways much like robots, in the sense of doing a lot of repetitive tasks that really just drive their concentration away from really interacting with the customer. So that right part of this diagram, I think, is in a sense the most important. The other thing I would draw to, we've been talking about chatbots and virtual agents for a number of years now, certainly in the industry and at Forrester, but robotics process automation were not on this chart last year. So we've seen just in 1 year where this technology of building bots that aren't designed so much to interact with humans as on the left with chatbots, but they're really designed to do things on behalf of humans. And that's really the opportunity we'll be talking about here today. Now, we just had a very good description of the core definitions from Jacada and how they view it within their business. The industry supports a little bit of has pretty much centered on these two terms, attended and unattended. Now, attended, as we talked about and as shown here, is really where the bot is interacting with a human. There's that interaction requires often messages to be exchanged, maybe a little user interface that the human must have in order to dispatch a bot, which is maybe pulling down a menu or maybe hitting a link, which will then dispatch an automation from some central server to do some set of tasks. But the key difference there between attended and unattended, really is this notion of human interaction with the bot. In the unattended mode, you really think of a server-based process that's taking over the control of a desktop that a human was interacting with. So it's more of a complete, takeout of the human effort there. Now, as Jacada was saying, which I totally agree with, is that there is, hybrid scenarios where you have, attended automation in the front office, in the contact center, that may create an event that triggers an unattended batch process in the back office to complete a task on behalf of the customer. So think of a case where, through a chatbot, a piece of furniture is ordered, and the chatbot is going to dispatch the logistics and basically boss around the RPA bot to go ahead and manage the scheduling of the shipment to the right address and do all the checks and so forth for that. So that's an example of a hybrid scenario where you have attended and unattended. But I think these definitions are holding up. RPA supports agent productivity. So this is what we'll talk about. We have use cases for this. The desktop tools have been a constant challenge in contact centers. If you look at what an average agent has to deal with, they're looking at 20, 30, 40 different applications on the desktop. They have to put WD-40 oil on the chair because they're swiveling around among these applications to try to make sense of it. A lot of the desktop support here is really getting rid of the mundane transactions like updating address databases and so forth. Or maybe creating a total of a penalty for a canceled contract in one application, and then copying the total into another application, which will then generate another application to send out letters and fulfillments and cancel the contract and so forth. So there's a lot of that kind of work that really can be taken over by this. So multiple data sources, multiple applications. Horrible navigation in a lot of cases that hinder agent productivity. Just think of the training that an agent has to have to navigate these, often legacy systems that clutter their desktop. The competency of the RPA category is around control of that desktop, understanding how to interact with those applications that are part of that UI, whether they're a browser-based application, whether it's a fat client or a thick client application. The bots with the RPA capabilities know how to navigate through those in the same way a human would. So why train an agent to have to navigate those legacy systems when you can build a bot that can do that on their behalf? Standardizing service delivery is really important. The way to get scale in a lot of organizations has always been really to optimize, which really means try to synthesize patterns of work to make them repeatable. And so when you do that, then they lend themselves to being, in some sense outsourced. You could outsource to a BPO, but you can also now build a bot. If you've done the homework and you've gotten to a set of standard and repeatable processes, then you can build a bot to do a lot of the work. So this is happening in account onboarding and insurance claims awards. Agents that are supporting those. Plugging gaps in the legacy systems. One of the issues with this technology is that sometimes you need to modernize the system. Sometimes you need to kind of blow it up and bring in a new omni-channel analytics-based environment. So you want to be sure that when you're deploying the RPA bots, that you're not, for example, creating bots in one channel that actually institutionalizes an activity there where you might have been better off, trying to get to more of an omni-channel experience. So you have to be sure where to use this technology so that it doesn't inhibit you from moving where you need to go, can help. In 2018, we've seen continued focus on RPA for repetitive tasks, a lot more emphasis on governance as it starts to scale, and security. These are all capabilities that we're just beginning to wrestle with as these operations begin to scale. These bots have human credentials. Those credentials need to be highly protected. You have to have, particularly in the contact center in the agent world, you have the whole sensitivity of customer data and GDPR. You can't have the developers that are building the bots or testing the bots, see that customer data or work with the live credentials that could be used to access the trusted application boundaries that RPA operates in. So we're just trying to get an understanding of some of these issues. Governance is taking on a very interesting view and concept in this area that the bots are being viewed more and more as digital workers, a part of the digital workforce that really should be governed in the same way that humans are at some level. So you have a human that's onboarded, you have a human that's trained, you have a human that has performance reviews, you have a human that has a boss they report to, a human that leads the company. The only way to get a handle on the true governance for digital workers is to have the metadata and the version management that allows you to view the entire life cycle of that digital worker. Who created it? When was it created? How has it been changed? How has it been augmented? And so forth. So that's kind of where the direction for governance is going. And I'll talk about cognitive tasks with RPA in a few minutes. But this is sort of a typical agent support that we see. Maybe 1,000 customer service representatives handling millions of calls. Maybe half the desktops have more than one RPA automation. Now that automation can be on that physical desktop, or it could be a VDI or virtual desktop instance run in a virtual machine under some centralized administrative capability like VMware. So architecturally they could be different, but logically and in terms of what they're accomplishing, it doesn't really matter. They are on the desktop, and they're doing these things in the background to support the agent. The agent world has to worry about building drop-down menus or taking events from chatbots or events from core systems that are going to kick off robotic operations. So conversational chatbot, as was talked about, is an important integration point. Emails, is when you combine these bots with text mining, unstructured content analytics, where you're combing through the emails and maybe looking for sentiment, maybe looking to create a case to deal with that. The bots can organize that. They can create the case file. They can go and get all of the relevant information and put it in there. They can route it to a queue that might be managing that. So there are lots of ways to we're just beginning to understand how this technology can really help. A lot of moving data between databases without human intervention. This again is that swivel chair type effect. This is the updating 6 versions of Siebel you might have at different version levels. Most that we see are dealing with the legacy environment that I talked about. And we've always seen just very, very good business results, increase in net promoter score. Again, this is not all about taking hours out of an operation. It's about having a customer feel much more satisfied in dealing with you, having the interaction be easy and enjoyable because you have more human time for that interaction, and efficient because you have bots working to do it really fast and really amazing the customer. So just lots of good opportunity here. Now, this is shows really the combination of chatbots on the top. That's the human head. This is the centaur metaphor from Greek mythology. The RPA is really more the back end, the green part there, and it's depending upon others. Either a live human or a chatbot to really support the interaction with the customer. Now, there's a bit of we've written recently that there's a bit of a over pivot towards the focus on the chatbot as driving the next generation human experience. That we just don't think the AI is ready for that. And that there's a stronger opportunity at this point in time to really take the chatbots, the interaction along with RPA, and direct it at employees. Directed at your agent that's in the contact center, helping them do their job better, helping them reduce the robotic functions that they're doing, and giving them more time to interact, with customers. We've evolved for hundreds of thousands of years to be able to understand the sentiment of another human being, to understand if whoever you were meeting in the woods was going to kill you or not. I mean, if you didn't have that understanding, that intuition, you were pretty eliminated from the evolutionary adventure. So we really should focus the machine today on what it does best, which are some of these more background activities that deal with machine learning and statistical correlation and rapid search. And let's use our humans, in the areas that they excel at today. Now, there's no question that the future is going to be more and more, chatbot interaction, and they're going to get better and better and better. But we think that's 3, 5, 7 years out for when a virtual agent will be able to to really be, get into, that exceptional self-service mode. Now, if you look at where RPA is really headed, this is the number of cubicles. It's a way to think about it. There are other ways to think about it, but we've built our future of work forecasts by taking the cubicle inhabitants, which break into office and administrative. So think of that as back office. And then the agent world, sales and related, is really the 2 million, 1.9 million. And that's really where we're targeting here. I mean, that's really what RPA is designed to augment and replace workers. And it's it's not trying to. It doesn't have the real AI components to build the kind of knowledge bases that would allow you to disrupt the whiter collar workers to the right, management and professional. But today it's really focused on these cubicle categories. And we're seeing quite a bit of growth. The category is frankly growing at 50 to 75% per year. Is tracking beyond our forecast that we did about a year ago, which is unusual. We usually are biased towards forecasts that are too optimistic for a market. In this case, we've underestimated the growth in the market. The buying patterns, these are. There are thousands of use cases for this, to support order management, customer communications. How many hours in your middle office or in your front office are spent, just preparing fulfillments and outgoing correspondence, where where the agent is interacting with some system, a document system of some kind, to put a light level of personalization, into fixed fields or variable fields in a template that then goes into a batch and is then sent out to a customer as email or as a printed copy. That whole interaction with the document system is perfect for bots to do that. You don't need humans to do that. That alone, that one area, can free up thousands of hours a year, depending on the volume you have. So proactive customer service and so forth. I like to say that there's sort of a rule of 5, which resonates with a lot of organizations that have gotten to a certain level of maturity, with this technology. And the rule of 5 is meant to be simple. That's why it's called the rule of 5. If you find tasks that are simple. You can build a bot and do those tasks, and you can have a great return and a better customer experience. They have to be simple, and they have to be in relatively high transaction volume. Otherwise, you don't have the savings to support the automation. So what does simple mean? Well, that's where the rule of 5 comes in. If you have less than 5 decisions, so the bot, for this technology today, the rules are pretty much hard-coded into a particular script, for the bot. So when you get to a lot of decisions, you really want to look at other technology that has embedded rules management capability. I've seen organizations that have had 30 decisions in a bot, and it becomes too difficult to maintain. So keep the decisions low. Keep the number of apps that are involved relatively low too. There's a talent for RPA that it knows how to control an application. But, and that's a beautiful thing because it makes this very quick to deploy. There's no data integration. There's no API integration and so forth. On the other hand, it's very sensitive to changes in those applications. So the more applications you have, the more potential change in those applications, and hence the more bot maintenance might be involved. Try to keep the number of apps involved to 5, 7, 8, and you'll be happier in terms of being able to maintain that bot over time. And the last one is 500 clicks or less. So think of your agent who's entering data into a system that's cutting and pasting, doing these kinds of clicks. If you keep that into a modest range, that will be good. Now you have this; it becomes a perfect set of tasks. Often this is called task harvesting because you're harvesting these tasks, and you can build a bot to do that. And if you're in reasonable transaction volume, it will be a huge win. So that's the rule of 5, and it's less about the specific numbers, it's more about a way of thinking about it. You want to be sure you're applying this technology to the right business process. And in the attended world, you have unique challenges. They're more distributed. As opposed to the back office where there's a server taking control of a desktop. You have bots on hundreds of PCs. You have handoffs that are more varied. You have human initiated. You have APIs. You have hybrid transfer to the back office bots that we talked about. And because you're in a sensitive area dealing with customers' data, you have all these all the usual PCI concerns, and now a growing concern as GDPR, which it will, spreads its influence across the globe. Now, this is just when you look at these platforms like Jacada has, these are the things that I would recommend taking a strong look at. You've got system management control. The thing that separates this category from what it used to be, which some would call screen scraping and macros and so forth, really is the ability to centrally manage it. To have bots as entities that can be centrally managed, the architectures that have a database that has all the metadata about the automation, stores the automations differently. You can change things by going to the central repository as opposed to the individual automations. This whole area of scheduling algorithms and analytics and central management and control is really what has raised it to a new category. Without that, you would still be talking about macros and scripts, which some still do because they don't really understand what's going on in this category. Other things that are really distinguishing, look for desktop analytics, which now there's a fair amount of history in analyzing the desktop for agents. There are specialists that do that and so forth. But their focus is more on the efficiency of the applications on the desktop. They don't really look at the human-machine interaction the way that this technology does. A lot of this design of these bots starts with a recording, smart recording. And then based on that, it's put into an analytic pool that allows you to look at repeating patterns that lend themselves to automation, to being bots to do that work. So the desktop analytics is a very important part of this. Attended and unattended use cases we talked about. Basically there's a lot going on to help with the bot maintenance issues that are sensitive to applications. There's a lot going on in integration with more broad centralized environments like VDI and Citrix based on computer vision and surface automation technologies and so forth. So there's a lot happening and a lot to learn about as we develop this new category. I'm looking at my time here. I just have a few more slides, and I'm going to turn it over to Adit. But this is the combination of RPA and analytics. Very, very important. We've talked about this a little bit today, but chatbots for customer self-service, chatbots for supporting the agent themselves. RPA can do a lot of the blocking and tackling to support that. That's a really strong combination. By far, the strongest one right now is the second one: unstructured content, emails, documents that are coming in and being analyzed. The RPA bots only handle structured data, so you've got to have some other analytics that can take that unstructured world and normalize the information, put it in a format that can give the bot directions. That combination is really raising the value of RPA in a lot of organizations. And internal application change management. This is the idea where you're using computer vision and some small neural networks to understand the applications that the RPA is bumping up against, interacting with. So when that application changes, that's absorbed into the algorithm, and you can then give hints and tips and ultimately fix the bot based on those changes. Very, very doable. When you look at what's going on in general programming and application development, what they're talking about, this problem can be solved with more advanced analytics, the problem of applications changing that affect bot performance. So analytics and RPA, that's a very, very important direction for the industry. Overall, maturity is pretty low with this. You hear a lot more about it, in the general, industry information, and certainly voices like Forrester's contribute to that. But when you actually talk to companies, which this slide is an aggregate of hundreds, about 200 companies we've talked to, we put them into different piles based on their maturity, 1 through 6. So 6, you have to have a complete operating model for automation. You have to have multiple bot deployments across business segments, and be doing something with RPA and analytics. 1% are there. Most are in this level 1 and 2, which is exploratory or early vendor evaluation, but some 10% are in level 3, and that's where I'd say most of the organizations are. They're doing POCs, they're doing pilots in production, and excited about what they're seeing. So the digital workforce. I kind of talked about this concept before, blurring this sort of human and robot treatment, and that can be taken to a kind of a creepy state. We're not trying to suggest that they're in any way similar, in a personal or human sense. But what we're saying is that if you're going to manage them in a business context, you want to think of certain characteristics as being similar, and you want to build the technology and the reporting to really treat the digital worker and manage them much like you would a human worker. And we're seeing this too as an extension of the industry, that you're going to see specialization. You're going to see robot marketplaces pop up where you'll be able to download a bot for a particular domain. It probably won't work right away, but it'll be a strong template for how to get to a business result that you want. So you're going to see that. You're going to see the vendor community push this, and you'll see the service community, which is very involved in putting in a lot of these robotic process automation solutions. They will distinguish themselves based on having a catalog of bots, whether it's for an SAP environment, whether it's for an agent or call center environment, whether it's for IT service management. There will be specialization, and it'll take the form of pre-built bots. And this is, I'm not going to go through this, but you might want to look at this. This is the operating model that we're seeing most organizations aspire to. So this would be a level 6 if you had this in place. That would help you get to that higher level of maturity. And the sort of the headline here is that a lot of organizations are seeing the value of having the design of the bots be controlled by the business. The business could be procurement. It could be finance and accounting. It could be the operations center, operations management that controls the contact center, right? So lack of dependence on IT. Want to move quickly with a technology that supports quick. But there are issues with having bots developed in the business by non-professional programmers. You want to have a control framework. In other words, you want to have technology management on the right maintain what we call a 10-point control framework, that before a bot goes into production, it's got to meet these filters: security, business continuity. Is it an appropriate process to be robotized with this? And if you do those two things collectively and together, then it's a good way to balance the innovation you want in the business, with the rigor you want in deploying a technology. You don't want hundreds of bots running around in different data centers in your organization without kind of central control. Most want the technology management to do the control operations, to manage the control tower, to manage the performance, dispatch bots, take them down, but they're not comfortable with the business doing that. But they're comfortable with the business doing design because they manage the digital worker, they understand the process, and they'll be more efficient in doing that. So that's just a taste of our operating model work that we're doing. And I think I'm going to turn it over to Adid here, and hopefully I didn't take up too much time in the effort.
All right, wonderful. Thank you, Craig. Adid, I've passed presentation rights over to you, so you can confirm that you have that and continue with the presentation. Adid, are you there? I think you're on mute still, possibly.
Yes, I was. Can you hear me now? Perfect.
Yes, loud and clear. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Lee, and thank you, Craig, for the overview. So we're just diving into some use case here. It'll take about maybe 10, 15 minutes to talk about actual use cases that we have today, either mainly in production with some of our customers. Some of these have been implemented over the last several years. We try to kind of aggregate for you today a few of the more compelling use cases that we have. So with that, I'll just dive straight into it. So I think just not to belabor the point too much, but on the Craig's part of the presentation, he talked a little bit about how you choose use cases and kind of some of the rules around where RPA is useful. So I just want to, at a very high level, repeat that to say that, from our perspective, when we look at RPA and the implementation of RPA in the customer service space, we always look for the mundane tasks. We want to see what the agents are doing that is repetitive. And these are typically very good examples of where you can implement RPA, and it spans all the way from actually, being a lot faster than a human being doing it, but more so, it really takes away the agent's attention from dealing with multiple systems into actually conversing with the customer. And we see these across different use cases that vary from an attempt to lower handle time, but we also see other cases that deal more with compliance and risk management in the contact center. So the first use case that we have here is for one of our customers who's a business process outsourcer in the finance industry. And the particular challenge here is where the agents actually have to deal with third-party applications. And this will happen across many different verticals and in many different contact centers where not all the applications that the agents would use actually belong to the enterprise. Some of these would be third parties. And one of the most simple things that you would need to do with an application, obviously, is log into it. And in this case, what we do is we help manage all the different passwords for the different applications in a component called a password vault. This password vault is essentially, on the one hand, a place where you can store encrypted credentials securely, and a robot is responsible to pull those credentials at the right time and use those credentials to log into the applications. And obviously, and again, third-party applications, so you're not going to be able to necessarily include them in a single sign-on in a standard single sign-on solution or a federated solution. So what we do is, again, we use those robots to pull the credentials and log the agents into the applications at the right time. Speed of logon and maintaining the logon is one contributing factor to the benefit. Another one would be compliance. So we know if agents got a lot of passwords that they need to use and they differ for applications, they could easily write them down somewhere that you wouldn't want them to write it. It can be Notepad that's not secure. It can be a piece of paper. And obviously, so, we want to avoid that. So the solution here not only provides efficiency and speed to the agents in logging into the applications, but actually helps improve the security and compliance of the contact center. Another example here is for different processes that we automate around the different transactions, like reporting lost and stolen credit card. There's a lot of manual activity that's involved in doing that, and we help in automating some of those validations and some of those steps behind the scenes using the automation solution. So that's a little bit about this finance BPO. Another one of our customers, so we have several customers in the property and casualty space, and there are different use cases, and for the sake of time, I'll just address a couple here, and obviously all the attendees on the webinar can kind of read through the rest, but just to give you some examples, again, going back to regulatory and compliance needs. So in the insurance space, there's a need to document calls. We need to understand and document what sort of changes were made to different policies. It is not always the case where the underlying systems can do that natively out of the box. We use robots to track what the agent is doing. Are they making changes to a policy by adding a vehicle? Are they changing named insured? Whatever it is that they're doing, we monitor it, and then we use a robot to actually plug in that data into a portlet or a portal where it can be submitted to the back end as notes. So this is one example. Obviously, from a benefit perspective, handle time, accuracy of reporting, because the alternative here is really just to note it down either on a piece of paper or a notepad, and then having to type that into the notes portlet is something that, well, while the agent is using the notepad, is obviously less concentrated on the customer. It saves after call work because there's no need to go ahead and copy paste from notepad or retype into the note portlet after the call is done. So there's quite a bit of savings here from a handle time and an after call work perspective. I'll just take a look at one more use case here that's more to do with risk management. So either coastal restrictions or binding suspensions is not always the case where you have an event where we want to suspend for whatever reason being able to make changes to a policy. It's not always the case that we can enforce that in the underlying back-end system for on the insurer side. And what we're able to do here is use a combination of our rule engine together with a robot to basically extract zip code from a policy in an area where, or in an event where an agent is trying to make a change, and validate that zip code against a business rule that would indicate to the agent whether they're able or not able to proceed with the change. So on the one hand, we are enforcing compliance. We know that the agents will follow the process because they get a pop-up and alert to do it. And on the other hand, it's quite agile from a business perspective to change the relevant zip codes that we need to enforce. So the robot will just pick up, and that's a one-time thing where we program the robot to extract the zip code, and then we validate those zip codes against the rules that we define and where the actual business can go in and make a change. Obviously, address change, premium compare, these are both cases where We're automating processes where there's a cross-system lookup that needs to happen before an address change needs to be completed. A premium compare is also a pretty powerful use case in this event, where a customer might call in asking, why is my premium change? Why did it go up? And an agent, obviously there will be multiple, if not dozens of rating factors associated with a policy. This gives the agent the freedom of needing to go in and compare policy by policy, and they can actually have the robot do that on their behalf. It happens quicker, and there are typically no mistakes done at that level. One more example from a telco, a large mobile virtual network operator that we have in the U.S. This is an area where obviously it's quite similar to a BPO situation. As a mobile virtual network operator, you're selling airtime on behalf of the big carriers, and doing that, you obviously have to access their systems. Now, the agents would log into whatever system that may be, right? If it's an MVNO, they could be reselling maybe Sprint, maybe AT&T, maybe Verizon, whatever the case may be. They're logging into those systems. The MVNO does not have necessarily direct access to the back end of those systems to be able to use APIs to pull the data or to make or to accomplish some of these transactions like purchasing or redeeming airtime, validating PIN codes. So what we do is we use the robots and we program them to read and log in and perform actions within those systems to save the agent the time that's needed to accomplish that. So if I have a customer that I need to look up in a CRM, but then I have to, at a point during the call, the customer would like to purchase airtime, then the agent normally would have to go open the relevant system, log in, copy and paste again all the information into that system and complete the process. What we do with the robot is we look at the system that the agent is working on, the primary system, we grab all the data elements from there, and then we use that to log in and pre-populate all the information that's needed into that third-party application, thus saving the agent quite a bit of time in doing that. So again, you can see the pattern. It's where you have those tasks of copy-paste, anything that's mundane, anything that's repetitive is where you have a lot of opportunity to look at use cases for RPA. So I'll go to the next slide here, and this is a retailer that has been a customer of ours for several years, and when we first started working with this customer, what we saw was that it would not be uncommon for agents to have to look through as many as 8 different OMS or order management systems in order to find an order that the customer is calling about. So this can be a care scenario where a customer is calling in, they're asking about their order. Maybe they don't have the order number, they don't have it handy, maybe they just have their email address. So an agent, if they're looking at an order number, maybe they can understand which system to go to by tribal knowledge. But if a customer provides his email address, there's no way that they could know where to go. And in a pre-RPA implementation scenario, what would happen is the agent would actually have to go one by one through those different 8 order management systems and look for the order. Some cases they may get lucky, in some cases it will be the 8th. What we do is we actually automate the entire process for the agent. So we provide a portal where they can plug in their search, so they can provide their email address. And then behind the scenes, what we'll do is we'll go to those 8 different systems, and we'll go to those 8 different systems, and we'll do the lookup on behalf of the agent. And that lookup would happen simultaneously. So we can actually operate several robots together. In this case, we did not need RPA for the entire 8. Several of the systems were web service enabled. Several of those were not. So we were able to provide this unified search, if you will, into the 8 different systems by applying web services in some cases, RPA in other cases, but then eventually being able to bring all that to the agent. I always use the analogy that this is a little bit like a duck on water, where they're, pedaling very, very hard underneath the surface, but everything looks kind of very calm and placid on top. And this is actually exactly the case here. The RPA robots are working very hard to bring the information very quickly back to the agent, so they don't have to do that. They lower their handle time. The customer is on the phone less, and obviously getting a much better experience. I think with that, this pretty much concludes the use cases. So I'll turn it over to you, Lee.
Yes, thank you, Adi and Craig. So now we'll enter our question and answer portion of the event. To respect your time, because we're running a little short, we'll only attempt to address 5 or 6 questions, beginning with the questions that have already been submitted. So the first question, I believe, would be best for you, Craig. I think it's directed towards you. The question is, which industry shows the biggest opportunities for automation?
For this automation, right? For this automation, of course, RPA is a set of tools that should make up a component of your automation capabilities, right? So, but for this automation, the area that has the most traction right now is where the highest number of simple but repetitive transactions occur, and that happens to be in finance and accounting. So if you think of the business shared services, as opposed to a line of business service. So a shared service would be the contact center, right? A shared service would also be HR. Business shared services would be finance and accounting. Finance and accounting has just, there are companies that have thousands of people that are closing the books and doing reconciliations and so forth. They're buried in spreadsheets and, swivel chairing between lots of applications, doing a lot of core data entry work. So I would say if I had to pick one spot, right now I think that's the most prominent.
Okay, excellent. The next question we have here is, let's see, it says, what industry shows the biggest, this is a question directed towards D. What applications can Customer Service RPA be applied to automate?
So with the Jacada technology, Customer Service RPA, we have experience integrating pretty much into every type of application out there. So that spans from web applications, thick client applications of all different sorts, like Java, .NET, or Windows applications. And we also deal quite a bit with mainframe applications, either through terminal emulation or backend integration. So really support the entire gamut. It's very, very rare or completely unheard of even that we were not able to automate a specific application. And again, I've just named kind of the high-level technology types, but obviously, a lot of the common ones that you see out there, SAP and so on and so forth, these are very common in our portfolio.
Very good. We have another question here that came in for Craig that said, what is the best way to implement RPA?
So I take that to mean, should an organization go out and buy a platform and just try to build it themselves? That also could mean, is it better to do an on-premise or a cloud-based implementation? I'll take it as meaning the first. I'd say that most organizations, 75%, are enlisting the help of a solution provider to then bring in a platform, perhaps of their choice, to actually do proof of concepts. So the first step would be to try to understand the platforms and the distinctions among them, but then look at the solution provider community. Do you have a relationship with an Accenture or Deloitte, one of the big Indian tech firms, a Cognizant, or maybe a regional or just some systems integration type company that has a practice in RPA? There's a bit of a shortage of a certified and trained, qualified RPA implementers right now, but that's being addressed by training programs and so forth. So you have to be sure you're getting the right talent, that you're getting the A team, you're getting somebody with a team with experience. But that's what most companies are doing. Now, after they get through the POC and they get into the pilots, as they look around and see that this technology could be applied to 100 use cases, the business starts clamoring for it. Then they start to transfer the technology in-house and get trained in the deployment and the maintenance and so forth. But most start with having a solution provider lead the way.
Excellent. So we have a few questions that are similar, so I'm going to combine these into one general question. And the question is, how is Customer Service RPA different from other traditional RPA tools? Would you take that, Adi, perhaps?
Sure, absolutely. So the major difference between Customer Service RPA and traditional or standard RPA or non-Customer Service RPA is essentially the application of the use case. The technology behind the scenes is very similar. With Customer Service RPA, we focus on anything that has either a human self-service interaction or a voice interaction with a contact center agent. So anywhere in any channel, self-service or not, or assisted service, where you have customer service happening and there's a customer behind the scenes. This is Customer Service RPA. Regular RPA is more to do with back office types of tasks that don't have a customer waiting on the other end of the line for that to process, and that's where you can see quite a bit of use cases in HR, finance, and so forth.
Excellent, thank you, Adi. The next question is directed towards Craig, and they asked, where is RPA being incorrectly applied to the risk of damaging customer experience?
I talked about where bots are being applied to processes that it's not appropriately designed for, such as those that require extensive rules management. That's more the rule of 5 kind of misappropriation of the technology. In terms of affecting the customer experience, I haven't seen any, because generally, it's not like a chatbot that have a 40% abandonment rate on calls into chatbots. You're less likely to be offensive to the customer experience. You can improve the customer experience by doing things faster, making it more convenient, easier for the customer. But you're not going to be as likely to be as offensive. So I haven't seen where RPA has created a worse customer experience in any use case I've been involved with.
Wonderful. So now to wrap things up with our final question, this is for both of you gentlemen, Craig and Adi. The final question is, what is the ROI for robotic process automation? Tough one, huh?
So I'll start maybe. So from my perspective, when you're looking at an ROI, so there are two things. There's obviously a hard ROI and a soft ROI. From a hard ROI perspective, you'll see it in many places. Reduction of handle time, reduction of after call work, and also from a development perspective, a cost to own. There's quite a bit of value in it from a time-to-market perspective, because RPA solutions can typically be deployed faster than you would deploy a full-blown back-end integration. So that's on the kind of the total cost of ownership and the hard ROI in the contact center. That's more hitting the contact center metrics. On the soft side, there's obviously also the improvement in the customer experience that's involved with a shorter call, where the agent can focus on the customer versus focus on the systems that are used to service the customer. So I see it in those two areas.
Any final words on that one, Craig? No, I think that was well said. I think the way organizations are thinking about return on investment for this is not in terms of FTEs, full-time equivalents, which is too close a comparison to humans, but in terms of the hours that are taken out over some period of time, so generally a year. So if you have a bot that costs between, let's say, $10,000 and $20,000 a year, which would include maintenance, licensing, and infrastructure, just as a ballpark, you really need to be taking out the equivalent of a couple thousand, 1,000 to 2,000 to 3,000 hours. In other words, there should be a multiple, a per bot multiple of hours offset or FTE offset, and that's how organizations are thinking about it. So if you have a bot that costs $20,000 a year and it's taking out only 1,000 hours, which is roughly equal to the salary of that employee, that's not good. So you want to be able to, and that's where you get into the transaction volume being high enough. In other words, is there enough repeatability that it makes sense to apply this automation to? Companies can try to apply it in too unstructured an environment where they haven't done enough optimization to get to a smaller set of repeating patterns, in which case you don't have enough transaction volume to justify the cost of the automation. Kind of a long-winded answer, but that's the way you want to think about it.
Very good answer. Well, thank you, gentlemen. In order to respect the time of our attendees, we'll close out the webinar now. If we did not get to your questions already, we'll respond to you directly via email. So we have some questions still coming in the Q&A window that we definitely want to get back to you on and answer. Thank you again, Craig, Adi, and Dylon, for your valuable insights on how Customer Service RPA is shaping the industry. We hope that you have gained valuable insights regarding contact center automation and how it can be utilized to enhance your organization's customer service. A replay of the event will be available soon on Jacada.com, and if you'd like a copy of the slide decks, please contact me, ljudge@Jacada.com, and I'll make sure you get it. Once again, thank you for attending. Please join us again at Jacada.com, and have a wonderful day.